Discrimination, the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people, especially on grounds of race, sex, or age. This is what Webster's dictionary calls it. Are laws really being established throughout history, including the present, to make a difference or just to smooth out edges, to make people feel better? There are some laws that, when they are created, they're like a band-aid. They put it over the problem, but the problem isn't addressed. Some of these have been seen in history. Slavery was abolished years ago, but that doesn't mean it was eliminated from people's hearts and minds. It may have been documented that it's no longer allowed, no longer used. People cannot be treated unfairly or unequally, but that doesn't mean people don't feel that way still inside. There's ways that people are discriminated every day, and sometimes it's in a silent and subtle way, in ways that, in workplaces, somebody's not going to come outwardly and tell you, I don't like Latinos, I don't like black people. It's going to be inside of them because they don't want to jeopardize their job. But at the same time, it is inside of them, and they deal with it every day, inside and out, and it's a subtle bias. It's not something that is outspoken. People that go on protests and silly tyrants about their beliefs and what they stand for. In the article, Can Racial Profiling Be Avoided Under the Arizona Immigration Law? Authors Gertner, Neer, and Davidio, they tell us of a subtle racism that exists, something that can be considered more worse than an outward show of discrimination, something that eats away at your soul, makes it harder for the individual carrying the burden instead of just letting go and not judging people. These authors also tell us that in recent studies shown that the bias towards black people, black Americans, and Latinos have been very similar in the way they're approached and handled. Even most recently, whites continue to treat them less. The Latinos are not equal. Even though some of them work very hard at what they do and they have legal status in the U.S., they are still considered less than the typical white American. And it shouldn't be that way. They are just as equal as any other person that's working a job, living in the U.S. with the status of a citizen. Errol Jones states in his article that Latinos continue to fight racism in Idaho. He states that it took the U.S. Civil Rights Act of 1964 in Idaho and the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., the civil rights leader, to chip away at its granite block of bigotry. Unlike this act, it was common in Idaho, just like in the days of segregation, to see no Mexican signs in local businesses, in their windows, in front of their business doors, so Mexicans could not patronize these places. They were not allowed in. Not only that, but the local farms that hired these immigrants coming in, they did not provide them with sanitary conditions to take care of themselves, specifically going to the restroom, cleaning themselves up, or anything of the sort. In 1968, Idaho Senator Phil Batt decided he was going to do something about it. He listened to the people, and he passed what is called SB 1221 to create an official human rights commission. But no matter how hard he pushed, and the Latino community behind him pushed it, it was downplayed. Other senators stepped in and they rearranged what the words said, and they weakened the bill, so to speak, so that it did cover the issues, but it didn't really enforce them. Signs were taken down in the towns. People had to do things a little differently, but truly it never really changed 100%. It still was just as hard. Conditions weren't changed. Not until the 70s and on did things start actually getting a little bit better. Errol Jones, in his article, tells us also that good changes started happening, such as reinforcements of these laws. People started actually doing something about it. When Martin Luther King Jr. died, they realized that there was a problem. They had many people from all over the country gather at the stairs in the Capitol to just voice their opinion. It was a peaceable rally. It was nothing harmful, no riots, nothing like that. But they were just trying to make a point that they had a voice too, and they had human rights just like the next person. And they were heard. And these laws started being enforced more because they didn't want to see other issues happen like Martin Luther King Jr.'s. They wanted to make a difference. So legislature series of laws started being passed in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. The IRCA of 86 came about also with such improvements as legalizing thousands of immigrant workers that were undocumented. And they gained their citizenship. And on top of that, the best thing is they listened to them. They gave them sanitary conditions for taking care of themselves. They provided them porta potties. I know that sounds gross to most people, but for them, there was nothing prior. They gave them an opportunity to keep themselves clean. They even raised their wages and provided for them. So these are some of the improvements that they were seeing, and that was good. These are just some of the examples that Latinos and what they faced in America, and things are changing, and our country was founded on godly standards, and I believe if our country still stood on those godly standards, we wouldn't be in the condition we're in right now. God doesn't see skin color. In 1 Samuel 16:7, he says, "For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord sees the heart."